What if I could show you 4 sneaky tricks that make the harmonic minor scale really easy to use and play? We guitarists all love the dark melodic sound of harmonic minor and its mode Phrygian Dominant. We hear it used by legends like Slash, Gary Moore, Eric Johnson, and of course Yngwie Malmsteen. But let's be honest, the fingering patterns are awkward and complicated theory like 5th mode of harmonic minor, it just makes your eyes glaze over. But in this video, I'm going to show you 4 moves that make harmonic minor easy to play. I'll explain why it works, where to use it, and I'll give you a bunch of examples so you can get that awesome exotic sound into your playing in no time. Get fired up, grab your guitar, let's get into it. If you're a fan of 80s hard rock, there's no doubt that you've heard Slash use harmonic minor or Phrygian Dominant to set up the crescendo in his great solo in Sweet Child of Mine. Or if you love the blues rock power of the late great Gary Moore, you heard this lick in his classic Still Got the Blues outro solo. And of course, crazy licks like this blew our minds when neoclassical shred became a thing. And maybe that kind of playing made harmonic minor seem impossible, or the excesses of it being used like that started to turn us off. But it's a great sound with melodic applications that go way beyond shredding into jazz, blues and blues rock, and just good old rock and roll. Let me show you just a little theory about harmonic minor and the Phrygian Dominant mode, which is the way we hear it used most often. Oh, and do me a favor, subscribe to the channel. I get so many comments from people saying that they really enjoy these videos, but only about 70% of you watching are subscribed. I'd really appreciate it. So harmonic minor itself, it's pretty easy to get your head around. Now here's just plain old A minor or Aeolian mode. We've got the notes A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and back to the A, or we could say it's the root, the second, the flat third, minor third, the 4th, the 5th, the flat 6th, the flat or minor 7th, and the octave. Now to change plain vanilla A minor into a harmonic minor, we just have to change one note. We're going to take that flat 7 and we're going to raise it 1 fret from G to G sharp. And that little 1 fret change, it completely transformed the sound. To my ears, our plain vanilla minor scale now has a bit of a Middle Eastern thing. And the reason that is the major 7 being just half step below the root. It makes for a really strong resolution. That major 7 pulls your ear towards the root. And that crazy strong resolution doesn't just apply to single notes. It does something very interesting to the 5 chord in the key. In plain A minor, the 5 chord is E minor. Now, we can play a minor 1-4-5 blues with the chords A minor, D minor, E minor, and it sounds pretty meh, right? But in a harmonic minor, the 5 chord becomes E7. Because of that G sharp, right? And you can already hear how it wants to resolve back to the root. Now you throw an F chord in front of that E7, and all of a sudden we've turned a boring minor blues into the progression from The Thrill Is Gone. Pretty cool. So that's enough theory for now. I'll probably hit on another idea or two going through examples. But how about getting to some of those tricks that's going to make getting that harmonic minor and Phrygian Dominant sound easy? Here's the first one. We're going to take the minor pentatonic scale, which you should all know a couple of patterns of, and we're just going to change one note. If we're playing in A minor and we want to get the Phrygian Dominant sound over that E7 chord, going back to the A minor root, playing E minor pentatonic, it doesn't work because that scale has a G natural in it. And we need G sharp to hit that major third in the E7 chord and give us the great resolution back to A minor. So all we need to do is change the minor third in E minor to the major third, or G to G sharp, and we get a scale called the Dominant Pentatonic or Mixolydian Pentatonic, or some people call it the Jeff Beck scale. And it sounds like this. We get that Middle Easternish sound because there's no second interval in the scale. We go from the root to the major third to the fourth, the fifth. We skip the sixth and go right to the flat seven. Not having the second or the sixth, it makes the scale sound less major-ish, if that's a word. And as I said before, it sounds a bit Middle Eastern and slightly sinister. I would call E dominant pentatonic a subset of E Phrygian dominant, because all 5 notes of E dominant pentatonic are in E Phrygian dominant, so you get the flavor of that bigger scale. But the pentatonic version, it's a lot easier to remember and play. Here's a couple of slick tricks. Start on the D or the flat 7, and you get this little shape with 2 notes on a string and 3 notes on the next string. You could start it down in the 5th position and climb up to the 12th position. And now we're in what would be E minor pentatonic pattern 1 area, but we turn that into E dominant pentatonic, and it sounds like this. Check out this lick that's all triplets here in the 12th position. And this scale, it gives us that super strong resolution going back to A minor. Let me pair up an E dominant pentatonic lick with an A minor blues lick. Got it? Let's move on. Another way of using smaller chunks of harmonic minor or Phrygian dominant to get the sound and flavor of the scale is to use what are called triad pairs. If we harmonize plain old A minor into triads, the 5th and 6th triad would be E minor and F major. But in A harmonic minor, because that 7th goes from G or the flat 7 to G sharp or the major 7, the 5th and 6th triads are both going to be major, or E major and F major. Listen to how it sounds if I just play the E and F triad inversions together down the neck over an E7 chord. You get the flavor of the scale with just those triads together, but that's pretty boring, so let's make up a few of what I would call triad-based licks. We could make up a little sequence with the different inversions descending 3 notes of F major and then ascending E major. And my favorite thing to do with triad pairs, you can add another note from the scale to a triad, or you can borrow a note from, say, the F and use it with the E triad. Check this out. We can play the F triad at the 17th position with the notes A, C, F, A, C, and go back to A. Then bend the C up to D, so we're going to use another note from the scale for melody. And then we're going to switch to the E triad, but borrow a couple notes from F. We're going to play B, bend it up to C and release it. And then play G sharp, E, B, Go down to G sharp at the 13th fret and bend it up to A and release it. We could play that lick, resolve it to an A minor blues lick, and it sounds awesome. Let me show you another slick trick that's going to simplify the idea of triad pairs even more. Our third slick trick is to realize that you can get the sound and the flavor of Phrygian Dominant, and we've been using E Phrygian Dominant going back to A minor, by just playing the individual notes of an E major triad in the note half a step above each of those chord tones. Let me show you what I mean. Listen to this. Over an E7 chord, I'm just going to play this 6-string triad shape. And before each chord tone, I'm going to play a note half a step above it. And we can simplify this even more. We could bend a chord tone up half a step, release the bend, and then bend up into the next higher chord tone. For instance, the major third G sharp bent to A, release to G sharp, and then we're going to bend the A up into B, which is the 5th. That makes for a great phrase that we can easily resolve to A minor. I'm thinking of a Gary Moore style blues like Parisian Walkways or Still Got the Blues. Check out how that same lick sounds over a backing track. And we can do it with G sharp, A, and B like we just did. Or E, F, and G sharp. Or B, C, and D. Each of those little 3-note licks are complete phrases unto themselves with emotion and tension. And it's so easy to resolve them back to A minor. You gotta admit, this is a hell of a lot easier than learning multi-octave 3-note per string patterns. And you know what else? It sounds really great. You're getting the essence of that scale with the passion and tension, and you're exploiting it with some phrasing. And this is a perfect example between the difference of memorizing and then regurgitating scales, or actually understanding and using the most important aspects of a scale. Let me show you one more idea. If you've ever listened to even 60 seconds of neoclassical guitar music, you probably heard something like this. The all too familiar sweep pick diminished 7th arpeggios that resolve to a minor 1 chord. Yes, it got overused, and sometimes I feel like if I hear another sweep pick diminished arpeggio, my head is going to explode. But the fact is, the technique works. Why does it work? Well, okay, first you have to understand that over a dominant chord like E7, you need to play a diminished 7 arpeggio that's half step above the root. So over E7, we play F diminished. Now that arpeggio has the notes F, D, B, and G sharp, which all happen to exist in E Phrygian Dominant or A Harmonic Minor. So that arpeggio is another subset of those parent scales. And diminished, of course, is symmetrical, and we can move it up or down the neck 3 frets at a time. So we could go from F diminished, F fully diminished 7, to G sharp, to B, and D. And we get the same 4 notes just in a different order, so they're inversions. Cool. But those ascending and descending diminished arpeggios have been done to death, right? So here's something to make them sound a little less cliche. Let's pair them up with our other concepts and make up licks. We could do a triad pair with F and E major, and then go into diminished. And then play an A minor blues lick. We could play a dominant pentatonic lick into a diminished arpeggio and resolve to A minor. And then lastly, we could use one of our 3-note phrases, and after bending into the highest note, which happens to be one of the notes of the diminished 7th arpeggios, we could go right into that arpeggio. Here's G sharp, A and B. Here's E, F, and G sharp. And here's B, C, and D. And after any one of those diminished 7th arpeggios, it's easy to flow right back into A minor. It flows so nicely and naturally, and it is so much easier than thinking about scale patterns. And it's not just easier, it's about 1,000 times more musical. So there you go, folks. 4 slick ideas for using the harmonic minor scale and especially the Phrygian Dominant mode. It's an amazing, exotic, and emotional sound. Remember, it's not just about neoclassical shredding. You can use it in blues, blues rock, jazz, and just good old rock and roll. I hope these ideas really help you. Remember to like the video, subscribe to the channel. I'll see you soon.